When most people think of a roof, they think of shingles, but that's only part of the story. Today, we're breaking down what actually makes up a shingle roofing system, from underlayment and ventilation to flashing and drip edge. There are the components homeowners rarely see, but they're the reason a roof either lasts or fails. Joining me today to break it down step by step is Peyton. Peyton, welcome to the show.
How's it going?
Good, man. New year, weather's crazy.
Yes, indeed. Hot, cold, raining. I mean, it's Florida, right?
All over the place. So today we're talking about shingle roofing systems, right? I think most homeowners think a roof is just shingles laying up there magically.
Sure.
So why is that only part of the story? Start unpacking this for us.
Yeah, so, shingles, everybody can relate back to the shingle because that's what you can see, You walk outside, look in the roof, it's a shingle roof. Really, shingles are just the top layer, and you can almost imagine it kind of like an armor or a turtle shell, if you will. It is the topmost component, and it's meant to protect all of the layers under that, throughout the house itself.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So let's start at the bottom. We hear about underlayment, we hear about being dried in. What does underlayment actually do?
Yeah, so if you can visualize your house, right? It's stick frame typically, and on that framing there's what we call decking. That decking is plywood to essentially accomplish a flush, flat surface that runs down the frame of the house. On top of that is what we call underlayment. Underlayment is a water barrier, so its only one and only job is to keep water from soaking into all of those wood components, which would be your decking, your trusses, and of course the interior of your home if you keep going from there. In terms of underlayment, there's two common forms used in shingle roofing. One is going to be 2 layers of synthetic underlayment, which is the Florida Building Code minimum. So at the bare minimum, as you have underlayment on a shingle roof, you have to have at least 2 layers of the synthetic underlayment. It's almost like a plastic tarp, It's not quite visqueen, it's definitely thicker and tougher than that,
Okay.
But it's very much like a thin tarp material. The installation procedure for that material is that it has to get nailed in. So you have to lay an entire layer of it across the decking, nail it with these simplex nails that have kind of a water barrier washer on top of them. Once you get the first layer in, you have to kind of knock it off counter there so you're not nailing on top of nails, of course, and you do a second layer of that synthetic underlayment.
Okay.
So that being the standard choice does work without issue. Don't get me wrong, Florida Building Code wouldn't allow something that didn't work properly to be, on a new roof system. There's definitely a better option and more of a preference for when we put on a roof, and something we will always recommend. That's going to be called peel and stick. So for every component of the synthetic underlayment that requires those hundreds, sometimes thousands of nails, depending on the roof size, peel and stick is adhesive. So it's just as the name says, you peel off the backing, it sticks onto the decking itself. This being a nailless solution, it allows no water to penetrate through any of those nail holes that were made to secure the synthetic underlayment.
Right.
There's benefits across the board to it. Insurance will almost always recognize it as a better product, increasing premium savings. And GAF warranty systems, which we talk about a lot, also circle right back to the requirement, depending on the warranty level, of the full deck peel and stick. So in total, there's a couple different ways to skin a cat, as they say, and we're never going to do anything that's going to be under code requirement, of course, but there's always a better option, if you're willing to have a more upfront investment to do so.
Yeah. So we talk about that a lot as a theme, right? Is this return on investment? Just a little more cost gets you a much higher return on whatever it is, warranty, quality.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Staying dry. I hear about starter shingles.
Sure.
What in the heck is a starter shingle, and how is it different than a regular shingle? What's going on there?
Sure. So, if we continue to visualize the roof getting built, right? So if it's a re-roof, not new construction, we're going to tear off all the old stuff down to that wood decking. Once those water barriers are in place, like the underlayments, your choice of underlayment, before the shingling process, the actual shingles that you can see from the exterior of the home, starter shingle gets installed along the perimeters of the entire house. So if you can kind of follow just the outside edges of the roof itself, you have to install a starter shingle there. Starter shingles serve one purpose and one purpose only, and it is that is to pretty much guarantee the adhesion of the first course of shingles at the edge of the home. So again, the layered effect, if you have your underlayments in place and you are about to start installing the shingles themselves, there is a drip edge component, but we'll get a little bit more into that later.
Okay.
The starter shingle is there to make sure that that first course of shingle around the whole perimeter of the house stays where it is when it's installed. What you see happens when you're in a wind event, a hurricane, it could even be a gusty day, right? I mean, we got that last weekend.
Yeah.
The wind is going to kind of carry across the openness of the front yard, the backyard, what have you, and it's going to kind of whip and roll up the side of the house. As it does that, it's going to push up against those first runs of shingles there. The starter shingle is there to keep those secured and down through adhesion and a little bit more rigidity when it's nailed through the starter itself. This is a big, important part to protecting all the shingles of the home itself, because the bottom layer shingle is lapped under each shingle above it. So if you were to have the first layer of shingles right at the perimeter start to blow off in the wind, the second's going to pull up and be loose, that's going to carry the third, and you're going to have this zippering effect that can roll all the way up the slope of the roof.
Okay. So those starter shingles are more rigid. But not adhesive, or they are adhesive?
They are adhesive.
Rigid, more rigid and adhesive.
Yes, and
Okay,
although
so
it is a shingle, right, it is still a shingle that is layered under the shingle you can see from the exterior of the home.
Okay.
So if you can visualize there being one single layer or two layers, depending on the type of underlayment, in the middle of the field of the shingle, the perimeter of the house is actually going to have that extra layer as the starter shingle before the main shingle is installed on top of it.
Okay. One other shingle that I hear about are cap shingles. I don't feel like they get much screen time or attention. How do they play a role?
Sure. So you can visualize the existence of a cap shingle on any termination of a corner. So if it's commonly referred to as a hip or ridge cap shingle, the ridge is very easy to visualize because it's the peak of the roof, right? So at the very topmost part of the roof, you'll have the ridge, the cap shingles run down or across the ridge itself. Hips exist if you ever have two roof angles running horizontally down, if that makes sense.
Okay, yeah.
So if you can visualize, if you look at a roof and it kind of makes a triangle, but both sides are shingled, it isn't just a flat face straight down. That triangle requires a cap shingle. Those exist to, one, cover that transition. So it's got a molded square shape to it in comparison to a field shingle to wrap around the transition. And it serves an important purpose as, let's say, the wind that was kind of whipping up the side of the house, and we have a good starter shingle, so nothing's budging or moving up there. The next thing it's going to hit right there, because the field is very flat and secured down, is going to be those ridges or hips, on the corners there. So it circles back to wind deterrence. Shingles in place will protect the underlayment, which is the water barrier, which keeps leaks outside the house. It's just all of these different components have a different form and placement depending on where we're talking about on the roof itself.
Okay. It's a lot going on.
That's a lot to it.
A lot to it. Man, this is why you homeowners need to consult the experts. Another thing, I was talking with someone else earlier, and he was mentioning ventilation.
Sure.
And I think ventilation is maybe a category that doesn't get talked about when associated with roofing, right? It's a little confusing, and they don't even know that that's a component of a roof system. Sure. So what happens when a roof isn't properly ventilated?
Of course, yeah. Ventilation, of course, is the key point in maintaining the lifetime of a roof. So attic spaces in Florida, very hot. If you ever have to climb up there in the middle of the summer,
yeah.
I'm sure you know it. The way ventilation works in a roof system is that heat is always going to naturally rise, right? So what we would call the soffits, which is your intake of the roof ventilation system, run around the perimeter of the house at a much lower point, at the very bottom, right around where those starter shingles exist, right? The ventilation is going to be installed as far up to the top of the roof as possible. Therefore, you don't have any pockets of hot air stagnating and heating up the decking of the attic space. The biggest reason this is important and how it relates back to roof age is actually how shingles are designed. So you can think of an architectural shingle as 3 layers. It has a fiberglass mat that gives it its structure and rigidity. It's got a common bond of adhesive, which is usually an asphalt style membrane, and then it's sprinkled in with granules, which is made of all more asphalt components. And that's kind of like the armor or the shell style of the top end of the shingle itself. When a shingle or a roof is underventilated and it's always subjected to very hot heat from the bottom side, it will actually start to break down and make that asphalt membrane in the middle part loose and almost liquid. That's going to cause the granules to slide, or you'll see what they call roof boils happening. So you can imagine that asphalt membrane gets very, very, very hot from the underside instead of the top side. It's going to cause that membrane to almost boil and pop out. That loose and liquid asphalt membrane is going to pop the granules out, which is your protective layer, the topmost layer of the shingle. It almost looks like hail damage. And a lot of people will come out and say, hey, I think, somebody knocked on my door and they said I have hail damage, but I don't remember there being a hailstorm anytime soon. And you can get up there and see with lack of ventilation, it'll have little holes of missing granules. That top coat will be worn away, but it's actually popped outward and not pressed inward.
Okay.
Insurance knows what they're looking at, and they will quickly tell you, if you choose to file a claim that this is indeed not hail. It's a issue within itself, but Mother Nature unfortunately didn't cause it. Because it circles back to underventilation. Our take on ventilation and our preference for any type of shingle system is going to be a ridge ventilation system, because that allows for the exhaust, where the hot air is diffused outside of the attic space, to be on that ridge, which is the very topmost of the roof itself. That allows for no pooling of hot air towards the peaks. You can see on some roof systems, they might opt for an off-ridge vent, which is just a small singular box sitting on towards the ridge, but not completely at the ridge. That's only one or maybe a few select opportunities for the hot air to escape. If we go ahead and reventilate all existence of ridges on the roof, then that ensures that the peaks of every roof, a part of any corner or gable, across the board, is ventilated at the end of the day, which, kind of circles back to your return on your investment on the lifetime of it. You're really ensuring that this shingle roof will last as long as possible.
Wow. Well, you guys, when you're doing a re-roof, if somebody has, let's say, a subpar ventilation system on their previous roof, and as you're doing a re-roof, will you find ways to upgrade their ventilation system, like go to those ridge
Of course.
vents? And
Yeah, and that's exactly it. I mean, we can get into it does get a bit complicated. There's some math involved. It's called net-free area. So essentially there has to be enough net-free air or enough ventilation to allow for the expelling of the hot air on the roof side. Some roofs don't have a very large ridge. If it's kind of like a trapezoid type shape and it's a very small peak of the ridge there, then we do need to use external box fans or off-ridge vents to help get it to that point.
Okay.
What you see a lot of times though, and especially in this area, we're in an area where a lot of development has happened in past generation. This is probably the first roof that's done after the builder has put the house together. Their preference is the off-ridge vent system, just simply because it's cheaper. They can save some money. If you save a few $100s and you build an entire development of homes, and that's a lot of money a builder can save in their pocket.
Yeah.
The ridge vent system will always be our preference. If we can do it, we will do it across the board. And that's not something we charge as a premium or anything like that. That is included into our most cost-effective roof system, all the way up to one with, as a coworker says, all the bells and whistles,
Yeah. Okay. All right. So let's move down a little bit to drip edge and flashing.
Sure.
Same thing. I don't think those get discussed. I think shingles seem to take the main, star time. So talk about drip edges and flashing, and why are they critical?
Of course. So drip edge and flashing both have one thing in common, is that they are metal. They're metal components. The drip edge, if you can envision when we were talking about the starter shingle around the perimeter of the house, drip edge also follows suit and goes around the perimeter of the home. It serves one purpose and one purpose only, and that's to give a lip off the side of the house. So as the roof sheds water and runs down and off the roof itself, it doesn't run down the side of the house. I don't know if you've ever tried to like pour maybe a glass of water into something else. It doesn't have a lip or anything around it, right? So it's a little tough to try to keep it from running down the side of the glass. Same exact concept for when you have rain on a roof surface. If we can just extend it out just a little bit off the side there, that allows the water to fall off the roof and not down the side of the house. So if you have wood siding or something like that, or even windows, it ensures that you're not always having water run down and kind of expose the outside of the house to more moisture than it should have. In terms of flashing is going to be any transition where there is a vertical wall and a roof surface intersecting. So I think an easy way to visualize it, because flashing exists in many different kind of forms depending on a home's construction, but think of a chimney. So you have a roof slope going straight down. In the middle of that roof slope, there's a chimney that just sticks straight up, right? Well, that is considered a vertical wall. So what happens if you're in the middle of a rain event? You're going to have water rushing down the side of the roof and hitting against that flat wall surface, right? So flashing is they commonly refer to it as a 5x5, but it's an L-shaped piece of metal that keeps the water that's flowing against that wall from actually getting into the wall itself. Now, these are both very important components in our area because not every home is far enough away from the ocean to kind of mitigate salt exposure. So coastal homes, the common issue we run into with both flashing and drip edge is rust, metal rust over time. So both of those components, I would recommend to any homeowner, if you are even within a half a mile of the ocean, consider going aluminum for metal components on the roof. Stainless nails are kind of a given, and most people will, do their due diligence on the contractor side and ensure stainless nails are securing the shingles. But the drip edge and flashing, we see a lot of it's galvalume or something that's susceptible to that salt corrosion. And that circles back to why roof systems in total are important to think about, not just the shingle. You don't want to be in a situation where the shingles are still good, but there's components layered under everything across the roof surface that are failing. Because even though those shingles are good, they have to come up to access what's under it and what's actually causing problems on the roof.
Yeah, and that sounds a lot more costly.
Exactly.
In the long run. How does installing these products, flashing, drip edge, affect warranty and lifespan? You just kind of alluded to with that question, right? Is that, hey, a subpar product was done. And so anyway, how does installing these affect all that?
Yeah, so warranty is probably the easiest one to kind of cover because we're kind of set to a code of conduct through the warranty systems we install. I've said it a million times, but Florida building code is the standard, right? That's the law. That's as easy as it gets. You have to meet code. But for warranty and the warranty systems that we offer, we do have to ensure that we're using the proper products, the proper branded products, and the proper installation practices to make it all work together. Which it does circle back to exactly what I just said on that outside layer, that top shell of the roof itself could be good, but if you didn't work on the things that go under those layers and install them proper, those issues will still arise. Shingles are not the sole thing that keeps water from the outside of the home. It predominantly protects the components under it that are really doing the heavy lifting on keeping all the water outside. Yeah.
Okay. What's the biggest misconception homeowners have about shingle roofs?
Sure. Favorite one here is the existence of a 50-year shingle, and why a 50-year shingle does not mean it is a 50-year shingle roof. And I can say that 3 times and you'd still be equally as confused, so let me elaborate a little bit. Marketing in the shingle industry and the roofing industry, and it's become very commonplace at this point, they will commonly refer to a good architectural shingle, no matter what the brand is, as a 50-year shingle. But if you've lived in Florida for any amount of time, everybody knows that a shingle roof will not last 50 years. So how the heck does that work, right? So the 50-year shingle and the badge that they give a good, thick, properly manufactured shingle as 50-year shingle here is against manufacturer defect. So that is the manufacturer stating that we will, say 50 years or a limited lifetime, we guarantee that the shingle will not fail due to a manufacturing error.
Okay.
So, the granules are going to stay on as they are, but they're not guaranteeing that the shingle isn't going to age. They're not guaranteeing that the shingle isn't going to lose a piece of itself in the storm, cause a leak over time. So it circles back to the roofing system. I walk into a lot of homes and walk a lot of roofs that, are on their way out. It's going to have that unfortunate conversation that it's time to start thinking about a new roof. It's the first question that comes up is, well, I did this 25 years ago and they said it was a 50-year roof. It's a common misconception. A real world thing I can kind of relate it back to is like tires on your car. So shingles, just like tires on your car, are meant to be worn down. It keeps everything moving and going. You might buy a tire for your car and it'll say it's a $70,000 tire. But if you, depending on driving ability, driving conditions, things like that, there's no inherent guarantee that it will ever last 70,000 miles.
Right.
And if you think of a roof in Florida, it's almost like putting a pair of tires on a Porsche. It's going to get worn down over time. So it's there's meaning to the idea of a 50-year shingle, because a 50-year shingle is going to be a better product and a longer lasting component than a 25 or a 30-year shingle. But what really matters within a shingle system is how long things are warranted against things that will actually happen to the roof. 50 years is guarantee on manufacturer defect is great, but what about the guarantees against the leaks, against it being blown off in the wind, things that will actually affect your day-to-day life, with a roof system on your home?
Yeah. Sounds like a lot of marketing behind that whole 50-year concept, and therefore that's what imprints on the consumer, and therefore that becomes gospel in their mind without fully understanding it.
That's exactly it, and that's what we're here to do, is really just set the facts a little bit away from the marketing. What can, someone, or you, for example, as a homeowner, get out of investing your money into a proper roof system? What's actually going to help you out later down the line?
Yeah. It sounds like you have so many answers behind the questions, that you're just unpeeling the layers one by one to unpack, the why behind all these things, as opposed to just like, oh, well, that's what it is and that's what it costs.
Sure.
Having that deeper understanding of everything, how the manufacturing is done for the shingles and all that, super important. So educational, and kind of justifies why roofs aren't cheap.
Yeah, really. It's layers is the best way to explain it across any board, and it circles very back to that very first question there, is that the shingle is an important component. It is crucial to a roof system's health and longevity, but there is a lot more that goes into it, across the board.
And you're only as, what's the saying? You're only as strong as your weakest teammate or player or whatever.
Truly, yeah. It's, all it takes is one thing buried under those shingles to fail to justify having to pull all of that up to make it right and whole again.
Right. Awesome. Great info, man. Thanks for joining us.
Of course. Always happy to be here.
A roof is only as strong as the system behind it. When every layer is installed correctly and working together, that's what gives a shingle roof its durability and lifespan. Knowing what's on and under your roof helps you ask better questions and make smarter decisions. From our finest team here in Northeast Florida, thanks for watching. We'll catch you on the next one.